Hello, dear friends. This is Kardec Radio at 11 p.m., nourishing our souls together. We are here to study one more chapter of the reports of Neio Lucio, written right here. Jesus in the Home. In this book, Chico Xavier brings to us the very accounts of the beyond, reporting Jesus' gatherings and Jesus' explanations, new lessons, verbal, non-verbal lessons for all of us. Why do we need it? Well, if you just watch the news just a little bit, we'll know why. We're at a time in which people don't care anymore about religiosity, spirituality. We're talking about the mainstream. I was just talking to my husband, and it's so interesting when you notice that if you go to YouTube, you find silly videos having millions of viewers, and the serious ones. I'll give an example. The Dalai Lama. If you go to the YouTube channel of the Dalai Lama, he only has 137,000 subscribers. Versus, I saw a celebrity from another country. I won't say the names because I don't want to be judgmental. But somebody who just teases about things. And her YouTube channel has millions of people. For that mismatch is the reason that we need this book. In 1949, few years after the end of the Second World War, the good spirits bring to us a revitalization of our relationship with Jesus. We need it. We need to rescue this interaction so we can boost our lives to another level. Today, chapter 35, we're going to study the need for understanding. Why do we need it? Right? You may be asking. I won't say much more. Let's go straight to our dear master. Says Neio Lucio, the following was the scenario. One of the disciples had come to the home gospel worship, with a downcast face. In response to the Lord's fraternal questioning, he explained that he had been treated disrespectfully on the street. He had asked a number of debtors for payment, but they had responded with ingratitude and sarcasm. Christ did not offer the man any personal advice, but obviously, exhorting all the attendees, he narrated benevolently. So, put a pause. People are sad, depressed, indignated. Who is not in this world sometimes feeling this way? And he comes and feels disrespected. He faces ingratitude, sarcasm. Well, we may not go by a day without those elements, right? And what would Jesus tell us? The following story. With goodwill, he's telling us the following story. A great expositor of the texts of Job possessed a unique willingness for endeavors of understanding and kindness, and perhaps because of this, he established a school in which he pontificated with unquestionable wisdom. On one particular occasion, he was helping a troubled student who often complained about how he was mistreated in the town square. Patiently, he went with the students through the streets of Jerusalem, begging for alms for various temple services. The majority of the passers-by either gave or refused to give alms with a sense of indifference. But on one particularly busy corner, a seemingly healthy man answered their plea with harshness and ridicule. The master took the student by the hand, and both of them cautiously continued on their way. They hadn't gone very far when they looked back and saw the man fall to the ground. Writhing in violent pain, everyone rushed to his aid. They soon realized that the irascible brother was suffering from deadly colic. They continued on their way when they came across a gentleman who didn't even stoop to respond to their request. He merely gave them a hard and rancorous stare. Teacher and ward followed him, and when the strange character reached his home, they saw that a small group of weeping people were waiting for him, and that he joined them in copious tears. The two of them learned that the unfortunate man had come home to a dead daughter. They continued begging on the street, and were soon cast at by a young man whom they asked for alms. Expectantly, they withdrew a ways, and after half an hour of observing him, they realized that the wretched man was merely insane. Then they heard outrageous words from an old man who was promising them prison and stoning, but after some time they found out that the poor man was simply a bankrupt businessman who had gone from master to slave because of his enormous debt. As the day was coming to a close, the respectable teacher invited the disciple to head back to the school with him and asked, "Did you learn the lesson? Accept the need for understanding as a holy commandment in life. Never again will you complain about those who display expressions of rebelliousness or despair in the streets. The first one who we came to was an ordinary ill man. The second one had had a death in his house. The third one was insane. And the fourth had gone bankrupt. In most cases, those who treat us with disdain are following a path that is even darker and thornier than our own." And completing the lesson, the Lord concluded before the amazed disciples, "Whenever we meet up with bearers of affliction, we must show mercy and help them to regain their inner peace. The bull still has horns because it has not yet received the gift of wings. We commonly complain about the sheep that is bothering our repose by bleating in terror, but we rarely remember that the poor animal is under heavy news on its way to the slaughterhouse." Dramatic, dramatic, dramatic. Who on earth is not undergoing extreme conditions in their hearts? We're all under exam time on earth due to the transition of the planet. We're coming to a point on earth where the right is right and the wrong is wrong. And no wonder we're seeing scandals, bribery in college scams, right? We are learning about sexual harassments. We are discovering pedophiles in the church, in Hollywood, anywhere. And one thing is for sure, the world is changing. Things are being transformed. and on us the need to understand. We need to ask ourselves, why is this person or that person going through this tough time? In the book Thought in Life by Emmanuel, chapter 10, titled Understanding, Jesus in the parable says that it's a must to boost our understanding. But you may be asking, as I ask as well, how do we boost our understanding? We need cortical input and output to make it happen, meaning animals cannot understand, only humans. But if we don't boost that capacity, we're still lacking part of our main humanity. It's a feature of human beings. We need to polish that up. How so? Well, let's see what Emmanuel says here. Emmanuel says, okay. All of us are immersed in our mental waves by virtue of an existing natural circuitry. Later he says, until all beings reach cosmic consciousness, they are differentiated by the light that raises them to the pinnacle of evolution. And this is the book I'm reading, or by the shadows of darkness from the suffering caused by their past. This symbolism works even with humanity on earth. The sun, in its full splendor, is high above us, while the dark abysses are found below. All of us receive inspiration from the future from our celestial Father, and all of us suffer the repercussions of the past upon our lives. To undo the handcuffs of evil we have forged against our souls, we must seek the good, feel the good, visualize the good, mold the good with all the resources we muster. We can begin by distinguishing the criminal from the crime, just as the farmer sees the difference between the worm and the soil, so that he can lessen the strength of the former and enhance the usefulness of the later. And just as the farmer works to eliminate all blights to save his crop, so must our understanding find the means to help our neighbor who falls into crime. To make ourselves humble in order to help, without diminishing our own heights, is to ensure the improvement of all, and to thereby enhance our own progress. However, only tireless dedication to understanding can guarantee us the necessary balance in the task of our self-improvement. We must make it our most cherished dream, for only love, pure and true, can create in our minds the energy of divine light as it radiates from us into waves of constant renewal. Pause for a second. Let us put it all together. So he says here, it's a must for us to tirelessly work on understanding. So in the parable that Jesus tells us the story, he shows a master that takes the disciple to go after the people who are being rude and rough and get to know more about their lives. It's on us to understand. But you know, it's a fair question. Many people, especially caregivers, they ask this question. How do I know the limit of understanding and being abused, right? Well, these are two different things. We can understand people and yet put boundaries. That doesn't mean we're not going to understand them. Look at Jesus. A man comes and shares his feelings with him in front of everybody. And what does he do? He thinks of the whole, that man represents the majority of the mindset on earth at that time to future times. So then he delivers, with goodwill, he delivers a lesson to all of us. And it's immortalized. You see what Jesus did? He's teaching us something. Do not react. Because he understands people, but that doesn't mean he has to play according to their rules. I'm gonna say it again. Because somebody gets a soccer ball and says, I want to play soccer. It doesn't mean you have to play soccer. You may understand their need of playing soccer and say, okay, fine, play soccer. That doesn't mean you are going to play soccer with them. You understand them, but you also understand yourself. So one thing does not exclude the other. Understanding where people are coming from, their shortcomings, their difficulties, doesn't mean, and it doesn't make you a slave of their needs. Okay? For example, somebody comes to you and says, oh, I need somebody to help me with this. And let's say you can't because you're driving. Say, look, right now I'm driving like a child, seated on the back seat. Mom, my toy fell. Please pick it up. And you're driving. You understand their need to pick up the toy, play with it, but you're not gonna stop driving the car to pick up the toy, right? So you understand, but you also understand that you cannot give in to their need right now. So when Jesus is telling us the story, he's saying to the man who came to the group downcast, feeling disturbed about people's roughness, he's saying, it's okay. People have their way. That doesn't mean you have to be sad. Because people are making choices that are theirs. It doesn't mean that we have to absorb their choices. We understand and we don't take offense. People are not doing this because of us, for us. They are doing this because of them. That's why Jesus, at the climax of the crucifixion, he turned and said, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they are doing. Literally, he's saying, I choose to believe in the good. But he didn't give in to people just because. He said, it's their choice. I have to respect. Concept of justice. In the Spirit's book, third part, the last law that we study, the law of justice, love, and charity. Kardec asked, how can we define justice? Justice is defined by respecting people's rights. Pretty hard, but needed. People have the right to do what they want. That doesn't mean I'm gonna do what they think. And I'm not gonna combat them either. It's okay, valid. So the need for understand, says Jesus, and we'll repeat because it's so wise. He says, did you learn the lesson in the story? Accept the need for understanding as a whole commandment in life. Never again will you complain about those who display expressions of rebelliousness or despair in the streets. Whenever you meet up with bearers of affliction, we must show mercy and help them to regain inner peace. Understanding so we can help. But what if we understand that people don't want to help and we want to help them? We leave them alone. Didn't Jesus do that? right? A fine line. People who need help, people who don't want help. We understand, leave them alone. Hello, Aidan. By the way, hello, Adilson, Valéria Sordi, Leda Duarte. How have you been? Welcome, Dulce. Big hug to you, Pedro. Super hug to you, Pedro. Hipólito, how have you been? John da Rosa, welcome. Felipe, how have you been? Amanda Andrade, thank you, Amanda. Ana Célia, welcome. Paula, welcome. Sol Souza, how are you? Weber, how are you? Giovana, how have you been? Daisy, welcome. Raquel Bakeshi, how have you been? Teresa Castro, Carol Correia, welcome. Karina Alice and Nora Brazil, thank you, friends, for coming here and joining this collective effort to boost our understanding together. What can we do in the next 24 hours? An exercise, practical one, the one in the story. Contemplate. We talk about contemplating nature, but human beings are also part of nature, the creation. So let us contemplate, friends. Let us contemplate, right? Gabriel Inácio and Rudy, welcome. So let us contemplate in our thoughts, in our feelings, people scenarios, and understand and say, I get it. What can I do to help? Sometimes you just leave them alone. Sometimes it's, I understand, but I am not going to engage. Jesus is asking us to embrace this holy commandment of understanding. Understanding when people slander us, they are not well. I am reading again and listening to the book 2,000 Years Ago by Emmanuel. The slander created against Olivia is so cruel to her and the Senator Publius Lentulus, and shows to us that the behind the scenes of slander is so sad. People who create slander, they are so mentally ill. They're not well because they cannot see clearly people's lives. Hello, Márcio Lázaro. So, what do? We feel sorry for them. Because in the books 2,000 years ago and 50 years later, and later, in the book Renunciation, for example, we see that the fate, and I say quote-unquote fate, the effects of being a slanderer is dramatic in life. They may have an apparent good life, but at some point later, the effects will be felt. It can't end up well when we create fake news about people, right? So when we are the recipients of slanders, we say, we understand they are mentally ill, they are not well. So what can we do? We pray. Because the day they find out they made a huge mistake, it's going to be hard. Like Fulvia, 2,000 years ago, in the book 2,000 Years Ago by Emmanuel, she created such a slander against Livia and a mess for Publius Lentulus. The end of her life was sad and dramatic. Mental illness, madness, was just one of the features of her life. Obsessions to the level of subjugation really made her end up in poor conditions. Her transition was not easy. So for us today, as we're invited to understanding, let us contemplate the scenarios that we're watching and think. For example, a homeless. You're driving and there is a homeless by the street light. Instead of thinking, oh, I don't think they need it, they're just lazy. Look, he's so young. How come? Think. Spirit obsession exists. You don't know the scenario of his family, of his life. Just say, oh well. Nobody in sane conditions would be subjecting themselves to this. They must be ill, in need. Let me just do my part. Sometimes a boss at work, very demanding, rough, harsh. You don't know what's happening in their house, their family, with their children. The network of spirits, the pressure that comes from above, the pressure that probably you don't feel and I don't feel. But if we know of this knowledge, this holy commandment that Jesus is saying becomes our primary, as Emmanuel says also in the book Thought and Life, chapter 10, tireless understanding. Okay, it's hard, we are indignated, but then we say, the spiritual pressure can also cause a lot of mishaps. Not that we are victims, but we are under an equation of human behavior. It's not 2 plus 2 equals 4, as we think. There is X times Y, etc., etc. The equation is so complicated. So many factors playing a role that at the end of the day, we think, oh well, I wish I had done differently. We better take this route to new understanding today than tomorrow. Right, Livia Moraes? So, in the next 24 hours, let's do this homework together, okay? Wherever we are in the world, in the different continents that we are right now, let us contemplate the people that we're in contact with and press on regarding understanding, right? Dulce is saying, if we can give money, send a prayer for the person, it will help them and us. Exactly. Prayer is always helpful. In the book Heaven and Hell by Kardec, I'm impressed that every single case in the second part of the book Heaven and Hell, our dear Allan Kardec is showing to us the power of prayer for discarnates and for incarnates. So prayer helps. But let's do the good. Don't forget, St. Francis said, the best prayer is our good actions. Doing the good is the best prayer. The other one is just a natural consequence of doing the good, right? So this is it for today. Let us then pray now together, since we are in this current of light. Let us pray, raising our thoughts to Master Jesus and saying, Dear Master, what a life. This reincarnation is so precious. We begin to understand some things, and we can almost imagine the day we will understand more. Fascinating for us. And we rejoice because you brought us the good news. The good news of doing the good. You always pointed out the directions of the good. And we feel so blessed for this and much more. Not only for guiding us, but for modeling it for us. We love you, Master. We finally can say we love you, because in previous lives we didn't even understand, but now we do, at least a little bit, like a child that begins to understand the greatness of their parents. We understand the greatness of your tutorship. You, as our divine representative, modeling for us a life that we are yet to fully understand. Please forgive us for the days and the moments in which we really were operating in the overheat. May we calm ourselves, surrender ourselves to you, and be easier to your governance. Thank you for never giving up on us and for bringing these immortalized moments that we can now cherish with you. And so be it. Thank you, Juliana. Thank you, Sunshine. Tomorrow when we come back, we are gonna study chapter 36, which is titled The Tough Problem. Mamma mia, huh? It's about the school of life on earth with Jesus, our Master. Stories by the Master at Kardec Radio at 11 p.m. Nourishing our souls together. A big hug to all of you, and let us press on to new understanding. See you tomorrow, friends. Bye-bye.